Third time's a charm. John Giles, good evening.
Yeah. Good evening, Richie.
We got there in the end. Fantastic, Stephen.
Just about. Yeah.
I feel like one of the old school Eurovision presenters trying to get the Croatian jury in. John, the Europa League final last night, it's going to be another season for Manchester United without a trophy. This is probably the closest they came to bridging that gap, losing 11-10 on penalties to Villarreal. But in truth, I'm not sure the performance last night would have warranted a trophy. What did you make of it?
I didn't think they played well. Villarreal defended very well, sat back, but United didn't break them down really, Richie. They didn't look like scoring. Now, I must say, they were very, very well organised under Mr. Emery. And it was difficult for United in many ways. But I didn't think they played well enough to win the game.
It seemed very, very flat and seemed to peter out. There seemed to be an acceptance from a pretty early stage last night that this was going the distance and going to be heading towards penalties.
I think what happened as well, there was a vital stage in the game when they made a substitute. I thought they started well, United, and I thought they were going to win maybe 2-0 at that particular stage for the first 15 minutes. But the longer the game went on, the better Villarreal defended, and they looked less likely to score. And I think a big point in the game was the substitutions that Villarreal made. They had 5 substitutions on before the 90 minutes was up, and United didn't make any substitutions until after the 90 minutes. And I think that changed the game dramatically, because I thought United looked very tired towards the end of the game, Richie.
Could you see any possible reasoning as to why Solskjaer may have waited that long to make alterations?
Not really, because I mean it's been a busy season, as we know. Some of the players weren't playing so well. You were going to go into extra time, which was vital to them at that particular stage. So there's 1 or 2 players. I don't think Rashford was playing very well. 1 or 2 other players weren't playing. Pogba got tired, I think. Fernandes wasn't really in it as much as he has been during this particular season. So there was quite a few substitutions he could have made.
And decided against them. The other one, I guess, as well, as the people are questioning, is whether or not Dean Henderson could have been introduced for the penalty shootout, because David De Gea's record with penalties is pretty poor. Dean Henderson is a goalkeeper known for his ability to save penalties. Is that a change that you would have advocated heading towards a shootout?
Well, to be honest, Richie, I never thought of that, and I didn't think it was going. Most people wouldn't, to be fair to Solskjaer, that it was going to go to 10 or 11 penalties, Richie. I mean, it's very hard to know that. And really, if you're going into that situation, you want your best goalkeeper in there, and especially a goalkeeper that's played 90 minutes and longer.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't blame him for that at all. I would never have thought that.
Yeah.
But what I must say on that, I think it's very, very unfair. The rules are very, very unfair on the goalkeepers in the shootout, Richie. I don't think the goalkeepers should be asked to take penalties.
Really?
No. I think that the goalkeepers are there to stop penalties. I think it's a bit unfair of them to ask them to take penalties. I think what they should do is roll it out again. You know, if it goes to the state it was in, okay, start again and we go from the number 1 penalties. I think that would be fairer on goalkeepers. I really don't think it's fair on them. Outfield
players and then roll around again. But just in terms of Solskjaer himself, like we mentioned last night on the show and touched upon it again then in the newsround before you came on, that last night was going to be a referendum on how Solskjaer stood at the club and on what his position was going to be like and how strong his position was going to be going forward from here. Where do you think it leaves him, last night's defeat?
I don't think there'll be any change on it. Actually, I think the people who are in control of getting the players in and that, I don't think Solskjaer's in control of that. And this is my own theory on it, Richie. I don't think they'd want anybody else in but Solskjaer. I think Solskjaer is not in control of that particular situation, and he's not going to make a fuss about it, Richie.
And that he's more willing and more pliable and more able to do the board's bidding, essentially.
That's what I think.
Yeah,
that's what I think. I don't see Solskjaer as a real leader. I really don't. I think he's a good lad. I think he's a very nice lad. He's done a reasonable job, right? But I don't think he's in charge of the buying and selling. I don't think he's a real leader. I mean, even in the lead up to the I was reading his stuff in the lead up to the game, and he was talking about the destiny. You know, it was Matt Busby's birthday, and it was the date when they won the treble. You know, when he played in himself in the European Cup and that. I mean, that's nonsense talk. You know, there's no destiny. And just because it happened some 20 years ago, it's not going to affect the match in any way whatsoever. Last night, he's the leader now. You know, he's not playing. It's Alex Ferguson and Matt Busby. They had their day. He has to emulate them, and you don't do it by going back 20 years or 22 years, in my opinion. And I know I appear to probably be too hard on him. I think he's a nice fella. He's done the best he can. He's made some improvements, but he hasn't got that steel that's needed, I think, at Manchester United.
Something I'd be curious to get your opinion on, because obviously Ferguson was there last night, and he's been Solskjaer mentioned him in the lead up to the match that they were bringing Ferguson with him, and clearly you'd imagine he would have spoken to this team at some point. Do you think it'd be better for Solskjaer to put a bit of an arm's length between himself and Alex Ferguson and the Ferguson regime that went before, to carve out a position as being his own man? Because when you lean that heavily on history, it doesn't reflect well on you if you don't manage to emulate it.
Well, that's exactly what I've been trying to say there, Richie. I mightn't have said it very well, but that's it. I mean, when you go into Manchester United, okay, you recognise and you give respect to previous managers like Ferguson, who's a great manager, Matt Busby is a great man. But you have to do your stuff. You know, you have to go out there. You have to make your own career out of it. And obviously you have the history, but history is, you know, the history's gone. You have to make the most of it and what you have to do. But you know, I don't. When Solskjaer first came into the club, he said he was going to go back to the Alex Ferguson ways, and he got Carrigan and people around him that had come from that particular time. But that time is gone. You know, you have to respect it, but you have to get on with your own job. And I don't think he's leading the club in a way that managers would, like Ferguson did. You know, like Ferguson was a hard nut, great manager. He did stood down nonsense, but he never said that he was emulating Matt Busby or anything. He was doing what he did himself, and that's what you have to do. And I don't see that in Solskjaer, to be quite honest.
I know you're saying that he doesn't necessarily have the 100% say over who comes in and who goes out in terms of transfers. Would you trust him with a big transfer kitty going into this summer to well, I think they've identified the areas in which they need to strengthen, but would you trust him to identify the players that they need to bring in?
Well, if you're the manager, you have to, you know, if you appoint a manager, that's one of the things that you have to trust him with, Richie. It's 90% of the job, in my opinion. I know I go on about it in this programme, but 90% of the job, in my opinion, is getting rid of the players that you don't want and getting the players in that you do want. Because all managers have a vision of what they want on the pitch and how they want the team to play. Well, the only way you can fulfil that vision, if that's the right word again, then you have to get the players in that you want.
Yeah.
There's a perfect example with Van de Beek, right?
Yeah.
I think they paid 40 million for Van de Beek. And I don't think he's played 6 matches for the club, because he's very, very similar to Fernandes in the way he plays, Richie. You know, that was never going to be. I think Van de Beek is a very good player, but when is he going to get into the team? It's like having two very, very good left fullbacks, and the only position they can play is fullback, left fullback. You know, and that's what I find it with Solskjaer. That's why I when I look at him and just see what's going on, I think maybe he like a lot of clubs don't want the manager to be in a very, very strong position, Richie. And I think with the people at Old Trafford, I think he suits what they want.
On the Solskjaer situation, people who mightn't have necessarily the greatest of faith in him to take United forward might be looking at the people who suddenly find themselves without a job across Europe, and they're not exactly cloggers in management terms. We're talking about Antonio Conte, who's walked away from Inter yesterday. Zinedine Zidane suddenly finds himself without a club because he's left Real Madrid. These are people that United fans who don't necessarily have the faith in Solskjaer would be looking at pretty enviously and hoping that they don't end up at some of their rivals this summer, you'd imagine.
Well, I'm only looking at it from the outside. I mean, I think Conte. I mean, if I were Manchester United, I'd go for Conte tomorrow. I mean, I have said the same in publicly too. If I was in a position with Manchester United, I'd be very, very tempted to go for Bielsa at Leeds. I mean, again, I'll come back to Conte, Richie. But what Bielsa has done at Leeds is remarkable with the players that he has at his disposal. Now, if Bielsa went to Manchester United and Fernandes and Rashford and all these terrific players that they have, and did the same with them and played them in the same way, I think he'd be sensational. But anyway, that's another day's work. But he has put his stamp on Leeds United. There's no doubt about that. And Conte. I mean, Conte went to Chelsea, as we know, a few years ago, and won the league and the cup in 2 seasons. And there was complaints about him from the players, apparently, that the training was too hard and that. And Abramovich then got rid of him.
Yeah.
Now he's gone to, was it Inter Milan he went to?
Inter, yeah, he won the league there this season.
And he's just won the league again. Juventus have dominated there for the last, 8-10 years or so. And that's what he's done. But he's a hard nut. It definitely is a hard nut. But all the great managers that I've ever known have been regarded as hard nuts. Nobody harder than Alex Ferguson. There was no nonsense. No players could. He was definitely in charge of the whole situation.
From the outside looking in, it seems as if United's hierarchy would love the success of Ferguson, but they don't want somebody who has that much autonomy over the side, that they don't want somebody who has that much power, essentially. And that Solskjaer, as you mentioned there, kind of fits their ideal of that middle management role.
Yeah. Well, my experience in football, Richie, is that the people who are in charge of that particular situation don't want to give the control to the manager. They don't like it when a manager's in control. That's the way it is in football. They like to be in control of the situation. And that's what I think about Manchester United. I think Solskjaer is that type of person that they can control and is not going to cause any trouble. But it doesn't lead to success. You know, it's proven in football over long periods of time. And not my experience in football. I've asked different people about the managers, right, the really successful managers. And they say, great manager, not a very nice fella, though.
On the managerial front, because I guess the other big news of the day today is that Mauricio Pochettino has apparently been in talks about a potential return to Tottenham. The spell at PSG wouldn't have been that long if he does decide to go. That phrase we always hear is you never go back, but this one kind of seems to make sense because he worked really, really well with the squad that he had at Spurs during his 5 years.
Yeah. Well, if I was Pochettino, I'd be very tempted to tell Daniel Levy to take a hike, to be quite honest, because the way he treated him was outrageous. Yeah. Pochettino did a brilliant job with little or no money. He wasn't paying the players all that much. And then when he didn't win the Champions League, I think at that particular time or the year after, he sacked him because he wasn't winning anything. You know, Pochettino was performing miracles year in, year out. And look what happened when he got rid of him. They're in a worse state now. I mean, I can understand Pochettino. I'd say he loves Spurs. I think his time at Spurs was brilliant. And he did a fantastic job. But the way Daniel Levy treated him was dreadful. And look what's happened to them since he left. They're a shambles. Spurs are a shambles.
Would you think going back would be a bad idea in his behalf?
No, I think he could now go back on his own terms.
Sure.
Because I think Daniel Levy is desperate now. I mean, when he had him there, like most people in his position, what Pochettino was doing, no big deal. Anybody can do what he's doing till he tried it out. And now he's got to eat humble pie. And I think it could be I think in Pochettino's case now, if he wants him as badly as he seems to want him, then Pochettino can make his own terms, Richie. Sure. You know, he can say, if I come back, right, this is what I'd want, and this is what I want to do. I want money for players, and because Levy is desperate now, and Pochettino, it could work out well for him that he would get the conditions that he didn't have, because he never spent hardly any money at Spurs, and took him to four seasons on the bounce in the Champions League and to a Champions League final. And then he sacked then because he hadn't won a trophy while he was there.
Yeah, made a bad start to that season. I want to get your thoughts on this season's Champions League final in a moment. But first, you mentioned goalkeepers shouldn't be allowed to take penalties.
No, I didn't say they shouldn't be allowed to.
But they should be,
I don't think it's fair on them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's part of the game that
they're being asked to.
They're there to stop the penalties.
Yeah.
That's their speciality, And I think to ask them in a situation like that, that's very, very vital to take the responsibility to do it. When all you have to do is go back to number one again. I mean, it's very seldom that penalty shootouts go on that long, Richie, as we know. So the goalkeepers don't have to become involved in it. But I think I think it should be a rule now that you go back to the first taker and start all over again.
Well, TC has been on to us, John, saying worth asking John about the 1974 Charity Shield versus Liverpool. It was level after 5 penalties, and the 2 keepers agreed to take the 6th penalty. David Hardy stepped up and missed, and one of the Liverpool players then wouldn't let Ray Clements take the penalty. Ian Callaghan took the ball off him and scored the winner. Bad form, says TC. Is that what's informing this, John?
So well, that wasn't the rules in those days.
No.
Right? That was Brian Clough's first match, I think, well, competitive match, right? And we didn't have, I remember it well on the day, we didn't sort out who was going to take the penalties.
They would have been a novelty, really, back then, too.
Well, it was wrong.
Yeah.
David Harvey said, I'll have a go at it. I didn't want Dave Harvey to say it because I've seen him take penalties. He was no good at taking penalties. But nobody could stop him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the manager didn't say before, and Brian Clough never said before, right, if we go to penalties, this is what we do, which should be the case because there's always a chance we'll go to penalties, right? And David, I wasn't a bit surprised when he missed it.
It's the fact that Ian Callaghan took the ball off Ray Clements, though, and went and stuck it in the net, I think, is probably the main issue here.
Well, that's the right thing to do.
True.
I mean, if I had my time all over again, I would. I didn't know. Not on the pitch. The next thing I knew, Dave Harvey was up taking the penalty, and it's like I wasn't in charge of the situation, but I wasn't in favour of him doing it. But that was the manager's point of view. I think the manager, Brian Clough, knew he was going to take the penalty, and he didn't stop it.
Listen, John, you've gotten yourself in enough bother in that game without wanting to cause any more trouble.
Sorry, Richie, but that wasn't the rule at the time. I mean, the rule at the moment now is the goalkeeper takes the penalty if it goes to 11 penalties.
Quickly, John, before we let you go, this Saturday, I guess people are calling it the biggest game of the season, Manchester City versus Chelsea in the Champions League final in Porto. We've already had a dry run at this, I guess, in the FA Cup semi-final, which Chelsea very much got the better of. How do you see Saturday night going?
Well, to be fair, in the semi-final there was 9 changes from City's team. I think, as you regard as the best team. I think Chelsea's defend particularly well. I don't think they certainly won't make it easy for Manchester City, but they find it difficult scoring goals themselves. But the way I would read it, I think the first goal is always very important in matches, Richie, as we know. But I think the first goal in this particular game would be even more vital than usual. Because if City score the first, I can see Chelsea defending well. But if City score the first goal, then they have to loosen up and come out and start trying to score a goal themselves. And I think that will suit City. But if Chelsea score the first goal, then City are going to find it very, 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 very difficult to break them down, Richie. That's the way I read the game. But I wouldn't put much to the previous matches that Chelsea lost, because I know City made 9 changes in those particular matches. So we'd have to see now what it's like. I think I'd make City slight favourites with their full team now going into this particular match. But won't be easy. Again, I'd go back to the first goal, nearly dictating who would win the game. Yeah,
fingers crossed we get a good game. I think that's what everybody's hoping for more than anything else. John, before we let you go, this time next week you'll be picking your team of the season. We haven't had time to pick it tonight, but your team of the season coming next week. John Giles, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Richie.
Cheers, John. Football on Off the Ball is with thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit gamblingcare.ie. More in the football show after 9, but up next we're talking to Tide Leader.
This week on News Talk, we want to give you a 10k payday. And winning the €10,000 couldn't be easier. Listen out for your chance to win.
Look, there's no way you can fit all